Okay, this isn't money. Actually, it is pretty funny. This happens when you plug the wrong one in. As I was saying, a liberal, it's not on either side. A liberal is a relative term. If this person's conservative, this person's liberal. This person's more liberal, basically. You know, if this person's liberal, this person can be considered conservative. Conservative is a little more solid than a liberal. A conservative is pretty much far right. A liberal, you know, generally it's this area over here. You go over into this area, that's socialism. A liberal is not a conservative, but yet not a socialist. But the liberal is very hated in certain parts of the country, and sometimes with good reason. No offense to any liberals. Democratic Party, you have the social moderates, economic moderates. They're not as conservative as, say, Romney or Santorum, but they're not going to take the plunge and take us into socialism, contrary to what a lot of people think. Whereas the Democratic Party also has, Republicans, it's all conservative now. It didn't used to be that way. You used to have a moderate wing in the Republican Party. You got a liberal wing in the Republican Party. Has anyone ever heard the name Rockefeller? Mm-hmm. Good one. I mean, he had to get inspiration from somewhere. The Rockefeller family was an example of them. Mitt Romney, okay, Rick Santorum, what do we learn about social conservatives as far as political participation? A recent phenomenon or an age-old phenomenon? And within the power of nightmares. The evangelists. Is it a recent thing or is it been doing it for hundreds of years? Have they been out? It's very recent. Why is that? Because those same evangelicals used to believe that participating in politics compromised their what? Beliefs. Yes, it compromised their beliefs. Tainted them, so to say. Probably did.
Social conservatives?
What's that? Social conservatives, yeah. Evangelicals mainly, they did not want their beliefs compromised by politics. Economic conservatives, on the other hand, less government. Mitt Romney, do you remember when I was showing you the chart last week on the evolution from Republican to Democrat and Democrat to Republican, basically? The North was very Republican. Mitt Romney is somewhat of a throwback to those guys. Fiscal conservative. He's going to play ball with social conservatives to get elected. Fiscal conservative. Has anyone heard of the name in history, Henry Cabot Lodge? The Lodge family was a very wealthy Republican family, political family from Massachusetts before the Kennedys. Massachusetts used to be a Republican hotbed. Boston was. Now it's, you know, a bunch of college students who vote Democrat. But basically, yeah, Romney he's the old school. He's an old school corporate Republican. Very wealthy, very ties to various corporations, and he doesn't hide it at all. He's probably very proud of it. But social conservatives, also in the Democratic Party, as we see on the outline. You see the name Chuck Schumer and Bob Casey. Bob Casey is a senator from Pennsylvania. Bob Casey Jr., that is. He is pro-life. His dad, Bob Casey Sr., was also pro-life. What's the significance of Bob Casey Sr. and his last name, Casey? He's pro-life. Casey v. Planned Parenthood. Yeah. He wanted to overturn the thing. A Democrat. Pro-life Democrat from Pennsylvania. Whereas Chuck Schumer is a social conservative from New York. Why is he a social conservative? Can anyone guess? No, it's not nothing to do with abortions. It has to do with the fact that he gets a lot of campaign donations from interest groups that are in favor, pro what country? pro-Israel lobby. Now, I said on left wing that there's really none of them in politics, and there isn't now, because the left-wing Democrats, Dennis Kucinich and Cynthia McKinney, are no longer in Congress. Cynthia McKinney is now part of the Green Party. The party pretty much sailed her upriver. Dennis Kucinich, as a result of Republican redistricting in Ohio, they put him in the same district with another Democrat. So instead of two different Democratic districts, you have two Democrats in one district. She's the more moderate Democrat. She won. He's out. Long-term socialists. They're both pretty much freaks in their own party. They were freaks in their own party. They were too far to the left. Whereas our political parties, both the Democrats and the Republicans, are to the right. McKinney and Kucinich were over here. Which, you know, a little too far for the Democrats. Now, what do you notice about the Democratic coalition and the Republican coalition? Differences. What are the main differences here? The Republican Party coalition is just straight up economic and socially what? Just, yeah, straight up. They've drifted to the right. Democratic Party coalition overall is what? Kind of, you do have a few leftists still in there. A few. And you have a few conservatives. But generally speaking, it's more closer to what? Moderate. Closer to center. Moderate. Moderate, so to say. Although it's been accused of being liberal, the libs. But anyways, that's our coalition now. You gotta know, in the Republican Party, it's a little more straightforward. The Democratic Party, not so much. It's kind of a hodgepodge, so it's the Democratic coalition. Basically, like I was saying, the anti-federalist rhetoric in the old days was what? They're the party of the people. Whereas the Federalist Party is a party of business. Yeah, that same script that was written for the anti-federalist has now been rewritten. Same story, basically, framed for the inner cities. You know, it's not so much the people of the land now as it is the people in the ghettos and the lower income areas, basically. Same rhetoric, though. Now, in America, we have a two-party system, pretty much. I have other parties right there. We'll get to those in a minute. We have a two-party system, essentially. The two Republican Party and Democratic parties dominate. Now, you go outside of the United States, say the UK, for example. What do we notice here?
Several.
If there's a lot of colors there, that means there's what? There's more than... There is more than two, yes. And the red, yeah, usually, this is what I'm about to talk about here. The red is the Labor Party. The blue is the Conservative Party. Yeah, it's kind of weird here. The Labor Party dominates the inner city areas, whereas the Conservative Party dominates the richer areas of the cities and out in the rural areas. Why does this ring a bell? You know, why does this seem kind of familiar here? Have we heard this before?
Is it their story? Way back in
Okay, look. I'll give you a hint. Labor Party, the inner cities. Conservative Party, outer reaches.
It's the same.
The Democrats and Republicans. The Conservative Party, actually, I should have said this. I forgot to say this in my last class. The Conservative Party in Britain influenced the Republican Party in the United States. This is just a kind of interesting fact. A senator from Texas by the name of John Tower was the first, the first person elected statewide, a Republican elected statewide since Reconstruction. He was elected senator in 1962. He studied at the London School of Economics and studied pretty much the platforms of the Conservative Party. He brought it back with him over here, which he shared with his others. And a lot of it was more economic and whatnot. But Civil rights was another issue. You know, probably hated the Irish or something like that, and applied it to blacks. But yeah, you have a divide. You have basically your. Can anyone guess what conservatives in London, in the outskirts of London, the nicer areas of London, why do they vote conservative? Because they're out for their. Now, but out there in the sheep farms, why do you think they vote conservative?
Religion.
Yeah, the rural, the land. Yeah, well, maybe some of them, but think of the rural America and religion, and rural England and religion, and I mean, who else knows there? But you go into Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. You see other parties. These are what you would call nationalist parties. Parties that would like to tell people down here to go stuff it, and have been for thousands of years. Wales, Cornwall in England, they speak different languages. Ireland, Scotland. But you go to the urban areas over here in Wales, Scotland, they vote pretty much along the lines of the two-party system. Now, the point of this all is that in the 2010 election, Conservatives won a lot of seats, Labour lost a lot of seats. Can anyone guess why they lost a lot of seats? Why do you think Labour lost a lot of seats? Think Tony Blair and his support for the what? The war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan. And the fact that it sent them into the same damn tailspin that it sent us into.
Tony Blair is who?
Tony Blair is not there anymore. This guy replaced him.
And he was what?
The Prime Minister. He was the head of the Labour Party. The head of it. We'll get to the Prime Minister in a second here. I'll explain that. Conservative gained 97 seats. Labour lost 91. Liberal Democrats, which is a very viable third party, lost some. However, though, this is the number of seats right here. You have to have 350 to get a majority. At the end of the election, what do we notice? Do any of these people have 350? No majority. Were the Liberal Democrats, who do you think the Liberal Democrats ideologically are closer to? Labour or Conservative? They're closer to Labour. I'll show you. Labour.
That's why they went back to.
Yeah, right. Liberal Democrats are kind of like libertarians, a little further to the left. Labour, a little farther to the right. Liberal Democrats, Labour, Conservatives. Conservative Party. The Tory Party, also known as. Were the Liberal Democrats to nationally align with the Labour Party, add that up. 258 plus 57 is 315. Still what?
Short.
Of a majority. So the craziest thing happened. What do you think the Liberal Democrats did? They went to the Conservatives because that would give them a majority. And therefore they formed a coalition with strange bedfellows to form a working government. The Conservative Party had the most seats. This guy's the head of the Conservative Party. Therefore, this guy was selected as what?
Prime Minister?
Prime Minister. Whereas he is the leader of the opposition. Was the leader of the
What happened
opposition.
to the third party?
Huh?
What happened to the third party?
The third party is just the third party. They're part of the coalition with the Conservatives. And usually in Britain, one of these, the Labour or Conservative, has enough seats to form the majority. But in this case, the first time in almost 40 years, they had to form an alliance, a coalition of sorts. But yeah, that is the effect of a third party in government that we don't see anymore. But
So what would have happened if they went over here to be 315?
you wouldn't have a majority. You would have basically a bunch of other third parties
It still wouldn't work.
and two major coalitions that did not have a clear majority. It would be a non-functioning government, pretty much.
So they had to.
They had to do this in order to form a majority, and basically what you have is you have other, you see all these other parties here. But on the top, you basically have okay. Yeah. You see the bulk of it is within the three parties. The